Yeah.
Yes, so hello. We are again here to discuss a new paper. And first, let us just quickly introduce ourselves. So, Yota.
Hi, my name is Yota Kaoshima. I'm a research assistant at ATI Japan, Monash University in Australia.
Thanks, and Ryochi.
Hi, I'm Ryoichi Watanabe at Kyoto University and a PhD student. I'm studying the development of consciousness.
Thank you. And I'm Aniko Kustor from Monash University, and I'm also a PhD student. And today we are going to discuss a paper by Ezzyat and Davachi. Let's hope I didn't butcher your names. It's titled Neural Evidence for Representational Persistence Within Events. And this paper has been recently published in the Journal of Neuroscience. And the authors are from the States, so from the Wesleyan University in Middletown and the Columbia University in New York. And first I will quickly summarize this paper. So the authors point out or start with introducing this interesting phenomenon that if you think about this, your experience is a continuous flow of events. However, people seem to remember, or people seem to, people say that they experience events as a distinct and kind of separate, meaningful set of events. And also it is represented this way in the memory. So the authors wanted to see whether the neural representation of certain events is how persistent it is, what are the brain regions that are involved in the representations, and whether it's context related or how strict it relates to context. And to do this, the authors have done an fMRI study in which they have examined, or they have set up trials where scenery or scene images were presented next to objects and faces like famous people, the faces of famous people. And they asked the participant to imagine a scenario with these two images. And so in some cases, the scene image remained the same, and then the object have changed. And then also maybe two faces. So the faces have also appeared and in like kind of counterbalanced order. And then in other trials, the scene image has also changed when the object or the facial image has changed. And so this way, they were able to examine how different event boundaries impact the neural representation. So this means that in images where, or in trials where the scene image didn't change, they suppose that there wasn't a change, there wasn't an event boundary. On the other hand, in trials where the scene image has changed, there was this clear event boundary, and therefore they were able to examine how this change in the scene affects the representation of the objects and the faces. So what they have found is that the objects have been represented in the left lateral occipital cortex. And interestingly, they haven't found this with regards to faces in the fusiform facial area, or FFA. So what is important is that they have used the similarity pattern analysis. They have looked at how the similarity pattern of a certain region, like the lateral occipital cortex, So how the activity relates and how similar it is across different trials. So when you had one object shown and then another object shown and then a face shown and then another face shown. And so they kind of assume that in the first trial, you have the neural representation of the first object. And if this mental model is kind of held up by a brain region, then the activity pattern will be similar or more similar. And yeah, so this is how they kind of came to their conclusions. They have also pointed out that the medial prefrontal cortex seem to kind of mediate or correlates its activity with this event representation. And they have also found a correlation with the anterior hippocampal area. And so they suggest that this might be kind of like this might be an evidence for the role of the medial or the medial prefrontal cortex in kind of integrating information and integrating representations into the memory and into into the like across the sensory cortexes. So I think this is how I would quickly summarize this paper. Have I missed anything, or would you like to add something?
No, I don't have anything to add on top of that. Ryoichi, do you have anything?
Yeah, I all agree with Aniko's summarize. And the lateral occipital area shows normally shows the objective stimuli, right? So the authors checked the lateral occipital area. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So the authors first localized the specific brain areas. So the lateral occipital cortex, the fusiform area, and the parahippocampal place area, so PPA, and with this localizer task, so they could specifically identify object-oriented brain regions, face-oriented brain regions, and scenery-oriented brain regions.
Yeah, I see. Yes, that's my additional one.
So yeah, I didn't really get into the details of the analysis because they have done quite an extensive work. It's very nice. A lot of different way to kind of validate their conclusion, which is always a good practice. But yeah, I think the main finding is this, or what is kind of, they also emphasize as an important new finding is the participation of the this kind of higher order or higher level lateral occipital region in keeping up a mental model or a mental representation of something that is being experienced. So I think this is quite interesting because if you, yeah, so I think I wouldn't have guessed that in such paradigm, if you see an object and you start to think about this object, and then you see another object and another face, still after 3 representation or 3 different trials, you can still see some kind of similarity or residual neural activity that represents the first seen object. Yeah, it hasn't been in line with my conscious experience. How about you guys?
So yeah, I agree with you, Aniko, but here, when you say representation of some experiences, I am not sure, or it just means that there is some activation when experimenter presents something. So sorry. Ryoichi, if you have some question before, maybe you can ask before the thing.
Yeah,
I need to think about.
So I'd like to confirm my understanding in the experiment. So in the experiment, in the instruction, is that the face, imagine the face in the the situation. In the figure 1, the left are nature image, and right one is a famous face or object. And imagine the face or the object in the natural scene. And I'm wondering, the first one only imagine, or the seriously 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 also imagine imagine the bottle, imagine the I don't know, right? The water cooler or something, and imagine the man, imagine the woman. So each image was imagined, or the first one was only imagined. Sorry, I'm wondering
now. So this is just my understanding, but the author asked whether they were the subject was successful to have an imagine or to link between two images, face or object and scenes, natural scenes. So I think for all image pair, not only for the first one. That's my understanding. So what do you think, Aniko?
Yeah. So yeah, I agree that I think it's like the data is used. I don't recall exactly if they have said that, but I think it's reasonable to assume that they used data from trials when the person actually managed to imagine, or they said that they managed to imagine the scene, like the person inside or the object inside this scenery. And yeah, I think they had to do this in each trials. So yeah.
Yeah, so here, why I get confused is that, so when the scene were the same, so in the non-boundary conditions, so we have, or the subject will be were presented pairs of image in a sequential manner. So maybe some subject make up a story using the whole image pairs, although the subject will ask whether they or they could make up any story for each image pairs. So for example, maybe someone started to imagine that, oh, there is a bottle in this scene, and then asked whether they have such kind of story in their mind. And after that, maybe the story just continued in the non-boundary condition in some trials, but in other trials, maybe not. So I was wondering whether that is important things, or it's just an out of the interest in this paper. So so do you understand, or does it make sense?
Yeah, and I think it would be interesting to see if they can somehow analyze the similarity pattern of the first trial together with the second trial, like somehow merge them or average them, or I don't know how, but yeah, to see whether it is like, you know, kind of the first trial, like the first object, the neural representation of the first object is still there, and then the second on the third trial you have the first object and the second object. But I think in this paper actually they haven't analyzed that. They have only compared the first trial with the next one or the third one or the fourth one, but not between like each trials.
So the reason why I asked is that maybe, let's say in the second trial, or when subjects have a story in the second trial, maybe they could include an object shown in the first trial that kind of caused the similar brain pattern between phase 1 and phase 2. This paper, the authors analyzed or focused only the first trial, or the differences or similarity between the first trial and the last trial. But still, the first object in the first trial can be in the story in the last fourth trials. So that can be the reason why there's some similarity in some case, but not. Or what do you think? Or again, does this make sense?
Yeah. So you meant that sorry, and my understanding that yes, and the first one is first one and the fourth one is a different image category, right? So object or a face or so the difference of the occurrence of the difference is considerable. Yeah.
So for example, or in the non-boundary conditions, the natural scene were consistent across 4 trials, right? So when a subject came up a story in the conditions, even though that they were asked to make a story for each image pair, so for each trial, they can have a consequent story. So in the last trial, where subject were presented face image and scene image and have some kind of story, but still within that story, the object shown in the first trial can be participate in the story. Let's say a famous or the guy, a famous guy have this object in this scene or something like that. And if that's the case, then it makes sense there is some like similar activity in the non-boundary condition. On the other hand, in the boundary conditions, and the scene were completely, or the scene was switched in at the on the third trial. So does not I think less likely to happen in the boundary conditions. So probably that can be affect the results to some extent. I don't know. Maybe I didn't have the time to look into the detail of this paper, but so maybe the author addressed or resolved that kind of issue in some way. But do you agree with me, or again, does it make sense? Or
yeah, I mean, I'm actually not sure if like there was necessarily a story in all cases. Yeah, so some people may have just, you know, being able to imagine one object and not a story around it, but yeah, I'm unsure about that too. And I mean, yeah, it's quite likely that some people would actually have some kind of story built up because it just makes sense.
Yes, I agree. But sorry, I don't understand fully in the method. So as Yota said that the four situation for the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 image additional 1 and totally. So in the last four image, when the participant imagine the 4 image totally last trial, it means that water bottle and water pressure and man and woman's for 2 object and 2 human in the last natural scene they imagined, or or the each image and each story, or last 4 trials, the 4 images in the story. Which did you see?
so my understanding is the last one. So for each image pair, subject were asked to have like a story or the linked image, but yet maybe some participant can have or can use some pairs of trials or pairs of images to make another story. If so, then that possibly can be a cause why there similarity between two, or sometimes not. I don't know whether this is like a critical issue or they just do not care about that. But yeah, I am a bit unclear about how they instructed the subject while doing the task. So that's basically my question. Yeah, I think we should probably says that the task itself were from other or another paper, right? Written or published by the same author in 2014. Probably used exactly the same fMRI data. In this paper, the author reanalyzed the data, if I understand correctly. So the detail of the experiment were not described in this paper.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not necessarily that they reanalyzed, but they just analyzed a different aspect or a different task. And so yeah, indeed, they include a temporal memory task and an additional recognition and temporal memory test, but then they don't really use don't include that in the analysis, so they don't describe that. Yeah, but nonetheless, I think they have provided fair amount of information about the task. And yeah, I think this is just something that, either they assume that it's obvious, or maybe they assume that it was clear for the participants as well, and also for the reader, that the participants should only imagine one scene and with one object at the time. Practically speaking, they say that the participant had to imagine this for 4 seconds. And after that, they had to declare whether it was a successful imagery task. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say what's going on for 4 seconds in someone's brain. It's a long time.
So I think that kind of related to my first question, or what I wanted to say in the first, or in the beginning. So the experimenter asked only whether the subject could have some story, or imagining like a story. So they did not ask what the subject imagined, or how, not how, so what they imagine in each trial. That means that in this project, or in this paper, or they do not, or they, I think the author do not care about how these like images were represented in the brain, because basically they don't know what they were represented specifically. Of course, the images, cue images, should be used in the story, but still they don't know how they were, or the subject, what subject imagined. So just by looking at similarity, I am wondering how much can we infer the image or story that subject perceived or have. That's kind of, that was my first question, or what I wanted to ask to you. What do you think about that? Or should I rephrase the question?
So yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what can we know of this. You know, you could always argue that people practically could imagine, you know, these objects for a longer time, or, you know, even in a new scene, but it seems like that's not the case. So I think the important part is that this boundary or event boundary manipulation actually seemed to work, and it indeed stopped some kind of neural representation process when the scene changed. I don't think specifically the content of the conscious experience is important in this experiment. And I mean, I don't think we can actually say much about that at this point. But yeah, that would be my understanding of what you just suggested.
I see. So the author only care about this boundary versus non-boundary. So whether they can detect something using similarity, and that was the focus of this paper. So the author do not care about what subject have in their mind. Okay, yeah. So I understand this paper, or the main goal of this paper.
Yes. Sorry. I understand now what you said. So in this study, the authors saw that within the representational experience. So which means that if the boundary change or the background situation change or not, the participant or people see the same representational experience, or if the boundary changes, the people think, oh, the representational experience is changeable, and this change, how the change is represented in the neural activity, the authors want to examine. I think. Is it clear what do you want to say?
Yeah, so I think another interesting aspect is that they have found this maintenance of the representation, the neural representation of objects in this in the lateral occipital cortex, but then they haven't found this in relation to faces in the FFA, and I think that is quite surprising, or I think that kind of makes me question or makes me a bit more skeptical about this paradigm, whether it's, maybe it wasn't. Yeah, so I think they suggest that the face area was localized by unfamiliar, like normal general faces, and then in the task they used famous people, the faces of famous people. So they suggest that this might have been a reason why the representation wasn't that this effect could not be found in yeah. I mean, I can kind of see that, but and I am not very familiar with the details of how the fusiform area represents faces, and what are the these finite differences between, or yeah, the small differences between famous people and normal people, or yeah. But yeah, I think it is surprising.
Yes, I agree, and your point is so interesting for me too. So, and in this study, or how to think the result, the face and the object are different meaning for representation, or meaning for people. I want to say that the object is related to the situation or something, situation and the interaction between the object and situation. But face or a human is less than a face or a human information is less related to the situation, or something less than objective information or objective representation. So I think it is clear. So the object is or object. I'm sorry. We do object or right. So let me see. I will construct it my opinion. Sorry.
Okay, so before that, maybe I can say that left or lateral occipital is also respond to phase, which is mentioned in the discussion. So when they say face versus face stimulus persistence, they talking about the FFA. So this kind of a bit misleading because the face stimulus persistence can be seen or possibly be observed in the lateral occipital. So the point is that they did not see the face stimulus persistence in FFA, but can be seen in lateral occipital. I think. Or maybe I'm wrong in the sense that the lateral occipital is not related to the face perception. But yeah, I'm sure that it's related to face to some extent. Not sure how different in terms of role from the FFA, fusiform face area. Yes, again, to be honest, I couldn't read the discussion part in detail. So maybe I'm wrong, but
no, I think you're right. I'm not sure about the I can't recall the lateral occipital cortex discussion, unfortunately. But yeah, I think on figure 3, they show the activity in the left FFA and how it didn't differ in between the conditions. Because again, I think what they were hoping to see is this differentiation of boundary and non-boundary trials or trial sequences. And I think they then completed this kind of searchlight analysis to find what other regions might be impacted, and then they identified the left ventrolateral prefrontal cortex and right cuneus. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and I guess they suggest that it might be about more. So these regions might be related to the knowledge of the celebrities and how that is kind of integrated into these scenes or stories. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely interesting to see this separation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Luigi, can you ask your question now, or you still need time?
Yeah. So what I wanted to say as that. So why the LO objective area is activated and the facial area is not activated. I think the object as a tool needs to be considered in the context of the visual situation. So boundary is related, but the face or person information may be less connected to the visual situation like boundary. So I think the relationship between the face area and the boundary effect is less or nothing than the objective activity. Is it clear?
Yeah, but yeah. Why do you think that? I think it's it's unclear for me. Why?
So the object or other tool is related to the visual situation, something like the for the like this in the picture, secondary pictures, water pura is the matched the like the plant or something, but not the sea or something. But so the object or tool is important where it is in the situation, but the person or face information is not important for the situation, but so the important relation is between people or something, not the not the visual situation, but also the important relationship the others for the people information or face information. So in this experiment, the boundary means the visual scene situation. So the for object, the boundary change is important information, but for the face or the people's information, there's less important in the visual situation or something. So I don't know, but why it's different? But why the in objective pattern activation is occurred, but the face activation is not occurred? I think one reason is that, what do you think? It is not logically or something, but I think it is not evidence or something, but I think like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult because I think it's a fairly vague task of just imagine a scenario. I guess I can imagine different people bringing their own interpretation of this, and then maybe in some in some cases the participant would think of a scene that is more related to the face and then or like the identity of the person. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's hard to say, I think, but I mean, I don't think the goal of the experiment was to answer that, but I think it's definitely a good inspiration for further studies and more research in this.
So, Yoichi, maybe we can ask the next question, but I want to confirm that what you wanted to say is that, let's say, the hammer, or if the subject were presented hammer and sea, it's very difficult to have a story using two images. On the other hand, the hammer and buildings can be induce a very clear story, fixing some broken window with hammer or something like that. So what you are trying to say is that kind of, yeah, object can be used only in a specific situations, on the other hand, human or the face can fit almost any situations, right? So in the sea, maybe swimming guy, or in the grass field, maybe running or sitting down or something. So is that what you try to say? Or that kind of differences can cause the differences showing the results. So which is in the FFA, they did not find the similarity, strong similarity. On the other hand, for the object stimulus persistency, they found some significant regions. Or is that what you try to say, or completely different?
Yeah, so yeah, what you said is what I wanted to say, practice. So, but last time I think I didn't want to say a little bit different what you said, but now I agree with I all agree with you. And the object or tool is like the hammer is visor or no. It's strange for C, but it's good for the building. So the imagination is important or something. Sorry, but the human or face information is all matched a lot of things like the sea or the something building or so the yes higher. So I think that yes, sorry, yes. So what I want to say.
So if I were the author and defend to the question, maybe I would say that if subject cannot have a clear story, let's say hammer and sea, they just remove that kind of situation by asking whether subject could have a story or not. So that kind of effect can be like reduced in a sense by asking the question. Not sure how like effectively that filter out the effect yet. Yeah, if I don't know what the author thought about the question, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, and I think that would be actually a quite nice new experiment to specifically focus on this congruency of object and scene, and see whether the congruency affects this this neural representation. And then of course you can combine, for example, one congruent object with one incongruent one and see how it affects, and then just go for all congruents. So yeah, I think that would be actually a very good kind of extension and an additional experiment with a very similar design that would address this suggestion. But yeah, I can kind of see, I guess it's difficult because they say that there has been like 128 different objects and 96 scenes, and then yeah, we don't see them. Like we only were able to, like, the figures only show a couple of them. So yeah, it would be actually interesting to see whether yeah, what was the percentage of possibly congruent and possibly incongruent images. Yeah, I guess I would suggest that because these are, nice natural environments, maybe it's kind of weird to have like one single object there, even if it's like a I don't know, building, still it's somewhat weird. But yeah, I think that would be a very cool study to kind of extend these findings.
Yeah, I think that kind of extended experiment can be done in T-Lab, maybe, like congruent, incongruent, and information, and like unconscious, the context or something like that can be. And also in this study, the similarity of activity were measured. So maybe somehow we can use our like psychophysics experiment and extend this research to like some direction. I'm not sure. I don't know how or what can be addressed in that research yet. We can combine our techniques and their techniques in a sense to, answer some questions. Probably, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And then we will try for children your experiment. Yeah.
I see. I see.
But actually, I think that would be interesting to see whether children are, whether they have more like a less constrained imagination, so to say. Maybe they're like these congruency situations, they don't care about that. It's like, it's fine, we can have a hammer in the woods or in the sea, it's no problem. It would be interesting to see that, actually. Yeah. Well, now we have a set of experiments. Cool.
Okay, baby. So in terms of the extended the experiment or the further direction of this research, first, or while I was reading this paper, they were talking about the internal model and also like some maintenance or maintaining some information. So if you think about the internal model, that can be somehow related to maybe hot theory or predictive coding. So from that kind of aspect, we can have another interpretation on the result. I don't have any idea how, but that was my idea. And also, if we think about maintaining some information, that kind of related to global neural workspace theory, right? Like ignition and maintaining some information and broadcasting to other areas. So yeah. Again, I don't know how to like interpret this result from this perspective, yet probably we can do something. What do you think?
So yeah, I think that's actually a very good question. And now that you mentioned this, I was like, oh yeah. So with regards to global neural workspace theory, like, has anyone explained what happens after ignition? So like how long is the ignition going on? And so maybe this experiment is an example of having this object accessing the conscious, like accessing the whole conscious experience, and then like maybe because the ignition has like this ignition process is quite, I don't know, like a drastic, or I don't know. So then it still has some kind of remaining effects in the brain. And yeah, but so yeah, does any of you guys know if like this temporal aspect of ignition has been described, and what's the interpretation?
Sorry, I do not have any ideas. Like, yeah, while I was reading this paper, and I found the word maintenance or internal model, I started to feel, oh, maybe I can somehow connect this research to some theory of consciousness. But yeah, I just could not do or think of the connection between them. Rich, do you have any like good ideas?
Yeah. So I don't know, but according to this study, the medial PFC, MPFC is also activated. So if you want to explain this result by GNW, yeah, MPFC is activated. So the global ignition is occurred or happened. And also in the response style of this study, I can imagine or I cannot imagine. So and I can imagine means access consciousness. So I think this result is congruent to the GNW. If we want to say.
I see. Now I kind of came up with an idea, which is, so in this study, the author only focused on the case where subject could have a story, imaginations. So did not care about the case where subject could not have a story. So if they analyze that data and did not see some, let's say, not sure, like medial prefrontal area did not activate when such a case, maybe that can be an evidence of activation or some, integration in a sense, because if they can integrate two images that can, or the subject can have some imaginary story, but when subject said no, it means they could not, which means they could not integrate the information. And in such case, the area that is set to integrate the information should not be activated. So not sure whether it makes sense or not, but can be one future or extended direction. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I think it would be very interesting, and I'm very curious to know what was the, like, what happens when people are unable to do this imagination, or yeah. So what was the issue in those situations? Was it like this congruency aspect that you suggested? Yeah, and I would also think that maybe you can include more images and then like more objects, and then it would make the task more difficult. So you could perhaps yeah, kind of see a more diverse set of kind of outcomes of and not just this binary success or not. But yeah, I think that would be interesting.
Yes, I agree. And in this study, the data from the yes only, I want me to mean that in like the figure 1 or figure 2 or figure 3 something, it's only the yes performance or all performance. What do you think? If the all performance included, it is right. So or not. So sorry, I want to say that your opinion or this design is like the non-report paradigm. It means how imagine something but not report. And this study is only I can imagine what cannot imagine. So so I wonder it's similar to non-report paradigm or the report paradigm. If the report I mean that yes, I can imagine its report is up. So it needs the decision making and response or something. So it is categorized the access consciousness. But we can imagine like this design, not response. So it means this paradigm is a non-report paradigm. So we can compare a response and not response. And if non-response paradigm shows there was no prefrontal cortex or something global ignition, and only the anterior perceptual area only happened. And this findings will show that it is not explained the GNW or something we will conduct like this. Do you understand? Sorry.
So to be honest, your question or comment was not clear, but like, was it the question to my question or it's just your question? If it's related to my question was nothing to do with no-report paradigm, just suggestion to analyze the neural data where subject said, no, I could not have some story by using 2 images. So it's not no-report paradigm. If your question is from you yourself, then what's your question, or can you rephrase it?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Sorry. I said my only question. Sorry, and also and if the first stage of the analyze, as you said, yes or no, the brain activity between the participant response yes and participants response no, and this is for like the NCC paradigm. And next step, and also if the participant can easily imagine like this, so we can do the report paradigm and non-report paradigm, and we will be able to compare the report paradigm and non-report paradigm, and which shows the result will be explained by the GNW or not. So I think two stages experiment we can do next.
Okay. So do you mean that we would do a paradigm like such where you actually give the responses and then you identify the brain regions that are kind of related to this association of yes, when there's a successful imagination and when there's no success, and then use these brain regions in a no report paradigm to kind of see whether there's an activity pattern like consistent, and whether like, I don't know, you could kind of classify the brain activity in a no report paradigm of likely likely successful imagination and likely unsuccessful imagination.
So I see. So Ryoichi's concern is that the report or the prefrontal cortex, the activation in the area can be contaminated by the report. So we need to remove that by like two-step paradigm. So if so, yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys have any other questions?
Not questions. And this is just my personal comments. But I personally tend to focus on how to generate something, or how the brain generates conscious experiences. But it's interesting to think about how long that can last, and also how does it end. And again, I do not have any ideas, but probably using this paradigm, we can ask something like, how long does it last, or how does it end? Or does it make sense? Okay.
Yeah, so for example, we could use this paradigm, and instead of 4 trials, we would just have consecutive trials, and then see how far you can identify the neural representation, the similarities, and like, yeah, no, that's that's also a good idea. It would be a cool experiment.
Maybe in memory research field, that kind of experiment probably has been done, but the importance is that whether there is any unconscious process that can be lost after like perceiving something, or if so, how long does it last, and how they should be terminated? That's the kind of question.
Yeah, and this kind of brings us back to your first question of whether people actually imagined a story with like maintaining the same thing, or specifically only imagined one thing, and at the time at one trial. And then it's actually quite interesting if we would have that information. It would be quite interesting if the neural representation kind of was maintained, even though your conscious experience or access consciousness was not, or like you were not aware of that representation still being maintained.
Again, I do not have any or a lot knowledge about this, but biologically speaking, like the winner takes all, or the competition will be very important in this process, right? So maybe how the activation can be terminated is not that important question, possibly, but it just means that they lose, and that's it. That's one like possible prediction or interpretation. But if there's some like activity or the like mechanism how to finish something, that will be very interesting, I feel.
Yeah, I agree, and it is so interesting. But is it not the working memory?
So probably, but it means that something or enter first the working memory, and then after that, read the working memory. If you are focusing on working memory, but like generally speaking, any processes, right, conscious experiences, or okay, so if you're focusing on working memory, and not entering working memory, but rather how something can leave the working memory. That kind of question. What's the mechanism of leaving working memory? So does it make sense, or?
So you mean like where the information goes? Yeah, that's a cool question. I don't know. Maybe it remains there. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very cool question.
Yeah, if we think about some kind of flow or pipeline where or which can take input and think about this input can be like processed and then blah, 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 blah. Then we start to wondering, okay, then where this information goes. That kind of question can be like started to ask. But maybe they, I don't know, but just vanish. There are no like output or something. That can be also another interpretation. Not going somewhere, rather just vanish, wow, pop it out. That's it. Or again, if we do not think about like processes, information process flow, then like sometimes information just like popped up and then vanish, and that's it. No like flow from one area to another area. I don't know whether or what I'm saying makes sense or not, but again, the word information, what it means and how we use, that's a very important.
Yeah, I think we should kind of accept or kind of take on the word information as the nemesis of this podcast. Yeah, it always comes to us and we don't know what it is. It just causes problems.
Yeah, and my opinion that like the pre-consciousness stage or something, or pre-consciousness and attended and the conscious. And pre-conscious means if we attend, the information is up to the broadcasting. So and after of the broadcasting, it's also the pre-conscious stage or something, or pre-conscious, conscious, or pre-conscious. And if we attend it again the conscious stage by according to the GNW or Lame's attentional something sort of conscious theory or conscious prediction, I think, but I don't know. And also your question, your opinion is so interesting for me too.
Yeah, and just to quickly add to this, actually, even if we accept that, for example, you have the information and then attention kind of enhances it, and then it slowly becomes again like non-attended or unignited. but then how long is it stays, or how long does it stay in the amygdala? Sorry. Sorry. So how long does it stay in the unignited information realm?
Yes, it's interesting. So the information only is problem. So just or the how to say global casting time is decided, or the another information is come. So the now imagination is decreased or something, or I don't know. So the information is oneself decreasing the memory, or the other information. So a lot of information we process, and hey, I want to broadcast. Hey, I want to broadcast the other information or stimulus or something. So change or something. So the imagination of what broadcasting is changeable or something. So I think that.
Now I start to feel like maybe like self-feedback or self-connection play a very important role for maintaining some states and also finishing some states. Let's say if the state should be preserved for a long time, maybe some excitatory like self-connection or self-connected circuit can be very important. And if that should be terminated, then should be switched to inhibitory circuit, probably. Not sure whether like that's or there some logical or anatomical region which have that kind of system. But if there's such a circuit, then it makes sense, like how to like preserve or maintain some states, but how to finish it. And now I think we have already talked for 1 hour, or I think 70 minutes or something. So if you do not have any other questions, comment, maybe we can stop here.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for the discussion.